Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to another episode of the Athletics franchise here on MLB The Show 24, where today we're going to go through spring training and set the stage for the upcoming 2028 season where we'll move into Las Vegas. The Athletics fresh off of a wild offseason that saw a lot of movement in Major League Baseball, including with your very own Las Vegas Athletics. So we will talk about that briefly before going through spring training. If you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. Obviously, the big get the Athletics got was Shane Bieber. He was the new ace that we got. 4 years, $80 million to come to the team, as we wanted to be very aggressive, specifically in upgrading this pitching staff, and we signed not one but two high-quality starting pitchers. Mackenzie Gore signed a 3-year, $30 million contract to join the team. As far as the offense, we brought in Bryson Stott, the hometown Las Vegas native. Took less years and less overall money to come to the Athletics, signing a 4-year contract worth $76 million. And then, not a free agent signing, but we also have top prospect Bartolo Ayala, who will be joining the team to help out at the closing position that was a disaster last year. And then Garrett Whitlock comes over via trade from the Blue Jays that we got later in the offseason, trading a couple of prospects for him. And speaking of trades, we ended up by getting Kevin Alcantara from the Cubs, as well as Jordan Wicks, sending Mick Abel to Chicago. So a lot of trades and a lot of movement for the Athletics. Now, there were some other trades that got done at the end of the offseason that we're going to talk about before spring training hits. I like to do a couple of moves with some other teams that make sense before we get into the new season. I will say it took me over an hour to set up these trades and make sure everything worked perfectly. So I hope you guys enjoy them. So we'll start off with the Washington Nationals, who have been a bottom team for the past couple of seasons. They're still trying to get better, and they're going to offload a couple of pitchers because they feel like they have pretty good depth here. Starting off with Juan Vega Ramos, a 25-year-old who hasn't really worked in Washington. He will be getting a fresh home as he will be dealt. As you can see, he's had 3 full seasons with the Nationals, and it just hasn't really worked out. He will be going to the Pirates for a couple of prospects, Israel Navarro and Dennis Jansen, a couple of middle infielders as the Pirates retooled their team a huge ton this offseason, including getting Shane McClanahan. They're also going to trade Owen Murphy and Brendan Beck to the Twins for Brooks Lee, and I actually like this trade a lot for both teams. The Nationals get a top player in Brooks Lee, who could be the shortstop of the future, while the Twins lost a ton in free agency this year, and they get 2 pretty solid young pitchers to try to fix some of those holes. Going to the next trade we will see is Chase Dollander and A.J. Smith-Shawver. The Rockies just saw what the Nationals did, trading away a couple of pitchers, and they want to do the same thing. They traded these two to the Red Sox, who are looking to keep pace in the AL East after a very down season. Dollander's a solid guy coming off his best season in Colorado. Same thing with A.J. Smith-Shawver, 25 and 26 respectively. They will be in Boston now as Colorado gets Mitchell Woodard, a nice young relief pitcher, as well as a top pitching prospect, and Robert Madrigal, the big man in this package. Madrigal is the 30th ranked prospect in all of baseball. Next move also deals with the Rockies. A couple of seasons ago, they acquired Devin Williams from the Brewers in a trade, and he's a really good closer. The only problem is the Rockies have sucked, so he hasn't got a chance to really showcase his good stuff. And with him on the final year of his contract, Colorado is going to trade Devin Williams, ironically enough, back to the Brewers. Him and Devin Smeltzer will be heading to Milwaukee for a third baseman in Tony Reeves. And this is an interesting get for the Rockies. He's young, 21 years old, but he's ready for the majors. He's got a good bat. 77th ranked prospect, and will debut right away for Colorado. The next trade we will do is probably the last one. It will be Jose Berrios of the Blue Jays. Toronto was aggressive this offseason. They acquired Adley Rutschman and Stephen Kwan in free agency for pretty high-level money. And, well, with that being said, they don't want to pay Jose Berrios the final year of his $23.5 million contract, so they'll trade him for what they can get, and that includes with the Tampa Bay Rays, where they'll send him for a couple of prospects highlighted by Billy Bravo. And that's going to do it for the final trades before the season starts. Let me know in the comments section below what you thought. Again, I put in over an hour trying to make sure that all the trades work. People were getting DFA'd after I trade them. So it was a lot of work, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and it helps with the immersiveness. So now we'll simulate the spring training and see what happens with the Athletics and see what happens with the final roster cuts. So we simulate spring training, and the Athletics actually did pretty solid, I would say, all things considered, going 18-13 after a slow start. and they finished towards the middle of the pack in the Cactus League. Now let's take a look at some of the stats to see how our players did, and I have not taken a peek at these stats, so I have no idea. We'll start with the position player, or actually the pitchers, starting off with starting pitchers. Shane Bieber was the guy at the top. He had a 3.49 ERA, 38 innings, 37 strikeouts, the 1.29 whip. It's okay. I expected a little bit better out of Shane Bieber. Also, for spring training, I always set lineups and rotation to auto. That way they can kind of sub out the guys that they want to. So I have no idea who played how much as well. Mackenzie Gore did a little bit better. 3.19 ERA through 31 innings, 37 strikeouts with a 1.48 whip. So he did pretty good. He gave up a lot of hits, it seemed like, but he did a lot of Ks and also didn't give up as many runs. Jared Jones, that's a really good spring training out of him. Jones had a really bad year last year after being acquired in a trade from the Giants, and he put up 23 innings of 1.57 ERA. Whip was a 1.35. Seems a little high for the ERA, but if we can get that kind of Jared Jones this year, that would be great at the back end of our rotation. JT Ginn up next. He had a 2.53 ERA and 10 2/3. I think Ginn will probably start off this year in AAA after he had a bad end to last year's season and all the guys that we've acquired, but that's pretty solid numbers. Jordan Wicks, the other guy we got in the Cubs trade for Micah Bell, 3.41 ERA, pretty solid, pretty solid. Seems like the whips are a little high, though, and the ERAs are not, so we're giving up a couple base runners, but it seems like we're getting out of those jams. Kim Waldachuk did not have a good spring, 5.46 ERA. I thought he was the best starting pitcher we had on the lineup rotation last year, and, well, didn't do good this spring. He'll probably still hold on, though, as a back end of the rotation kind of guy. Sean Ariano had 13 innings, 277. That's good. He's another guy like Ginn that was called up late last year and did not pitch good. He'll probably start in AAA. The last two were the battle for the long relief pitcher job, and it looks like it was won by Robbie Francisco with a 4.02 ERA. Not overly that impressive, but JP Sears was horrible. 9.95 ERA and 12 2/3 innings. So I think if I had to go with the long relief pitcher role, I think Robbie Francisco won it. As far as the relief pitchers now, AJ Puck pitched the most innings, 3.38 ERA. These are actually pretty solid numbers out of the relief pitchers, 11 strikeouts. Mason Miller, 3.31 ERA and 16 1/3 innings. Garrett Whitlock, 3.97, a little bit higher, but he had the lowest whip of anybody in the relief pitcher category. Joe Barlow, our best reliever last year, 1.76. He continues to be dominant. I'm excited to see what this bullpen can do this year. Anthony Bender didn't throw any innings. We signed him to a one-year deal. I still anticipate him making the cut, as well as Ryan Thompson, but they're a little bit older. They don't necessarily need as much spring training. Closing pitcher, Bartolo Ayala pitched in 2 2/3 innings, and he didn't allow a run and only had a .38 whip. That's really good. Tony Santillan, 6 innings, 1.5 ERA. He was horrible as a closer last year. I'm thinking about maybe starting him at the setup role, maybe taking him out of that closing job. Might be best for him. He was an all-star just 2 years ago, mind you, and that's a pretty solid spring, somewhat a small sample size. He's a guy that's probably going to be on the border if we decide to keep him on the opening day roster. Lucas Erceg, 1 inning, pretty solid work as well. We'll go into the position players now, starting off at catcher, where Daniel Susac played in more games. He had 297, 1 homer, 4 RBIs. That's pretty solid. He'll be the backup catcher this year. Expect him to play a little bit also maybe at DH. Tyler Soderstrom, 338, 6 homers, 19 RBIs. There you go. Soderstrom had a down year last year, and this numbers was really good in spring training. So hopefully we see the former 2-time All-Star Soderstrom this year. Ryan Noda's the first baseman again, 212 average, 3 homers, 10 RBIs. That's all right. It's kind of what I expect out of Noda. At this point, first base is a little bit of a weak spot for us. Second base, Bryson Stott, 330 average, 2 homers, 14 RBIs. He also led in some category. Oh, you love to see that out of your newest superstar at the plate. Geloff also had a pretty good spring, 296, 2 homers, 7 RBIs. There's been a lot of talk about what his future looks like with the Athletics, and even if it's with the A's. So that's a good performance there. Max Muncy had 16 at-bats. He hit 4 hits in those categories, and 3 of them were RBIs. So that's pretty solid for him as well. Third base, Jordan Diaz played in 30 games, 234, 5 homers, 13 RBIs. It looks like a Jordan Diaz stat line. Not going to hit for the highest average, but he's going to hit for some pop. Tyler Freeman, 308. So you acquired him in a trade last year from the Cubs. Pretty good contact hitting there as well. Toro, only 125. I don't expect him to make the opening day lineup. And then Jacob Wilson had 200 average, our all-star from last year. A little bit quiet of a spring. Shortstop, we got a lot of guys listed as shortstop. Robbie Martin hit 341 in 44 at-bats. All right. Glad to have him back from an injury that ended his season prematurely last year. Ryan Hampton, a draft pick just a couple of years ago from VCU, hit 239 with 2 homers. Nick Allen, 273. Good defender. He's played good. I think he's earned himself another spot. Richie Veach might have played his way onto the opening day roster. 304 through 23 at-bats. He's a guy who's a fringe, but with a job like that, he might make the cut. Logan Davison only had 5 at-bats. He got a hit in 2 of them, though, including a home run. So he's another guy that could be on the border. As far as the outfield, I do feel like this is kind of where our weak spot still stands. Elliot Ramos, though, had a good spring, 294. With 4 homers, 7 RBIs. That's what you like to see. I want to see the bat finally come around for Elliot Ramos. Sammy Ciani, who platooned a little bit with him, also hit 286, and that's pretty solid work as well. No home runs, though, in his 28 at-bats. Center field, Kevin Alcantara was cold, only hitting 213. He did hit 5 home runs, though, so good pop for the newest outfielder. And Pedro Pineda had a pretty good spring, 296. A lot better than how he ended last year. I don't know if that's enough to play his way onto the opening team. The way he's played in the majors the past year and a half hasn't been that great. So I kind of want to start him maybe at AAA and just kind of build his confidence back up at the plate. Although that 296 will definitely help. Then finally in right field, Lawrence Butler had the most at-bats. He hit 243, 4 homers, 11 RBIs. Clark Elliott only hit 125. Not very good out of the young right fielder. And then Colby Thomas hit 833 with 5 hits and 6 at-bats. He's another guy that's on a fringe roster spot. That's a pretty good job as well as a small sample size. We'll take a look at the team stats real quick. Hitting, we finished 8th, so at least they're a top 10 in the batting average. Runs, we finished 11th. Home runs, we finished tied for 8th, so good hitting overall. Strikeouts, we were tied for 18th. We usually strike out a ton, so that's kind of good. 4th in slugging, as well as ERA, we were, looks like, towards the top, 8th, so that's good. And then as far as strikeouts, usually where I like to see as well, we were 3rd. And then home runs allowed, which was our Achilles heel last year, we went with 3rd. I don't know how I didn't see us at the top. And overall win percentage-wise, we were the 8th best team in all of the spring, so that's pretty good for the Athletics. But now it's time to cut the roster down to 26 and figure out who made the opening lineup. We'll start with the obvious cuts up first. Starting off with the pitchers, we're going to send Sean Ariano down despite a good spring. He just wasn't ready for the majors last year. Same thing with JT Ginn. We gave him a chance at the end in September last year, and I think he needs some more time in the minors. Plus, they're just so deep at pitcher. And because Francisco pitched better, JP Sears is actually going to start off in AAA. Francisco will get the long relief pitcher job to begin the season. We'll see how that works out. Going over to closing pitcher Lucas Erceg, we'll send him down. I expect him to pass through waivers. We just have a couple of other guys better at the position. Going into position players, Max Muncy will be the first. The young guy will start in AAA. I think he needs it. And then going over to third base, Abraham Toro will start at AAA as well, as he's only been used sporadically in the majors the past couple of seasons. Going back to shortstop, Ryan Hampton, the rookie, will go down as well. He has a couple options, and we're deep at shortstop. Going over to the outfield, Pedro Pineda, like I said, I want to start him in AAA, allow him to build the bat and confidence back up before we call him back up to the majors. Lawrence Butler will also be sitting down. It just hasn't really worked out for him as much in this series, and I think Thomas and Clark Elliott have proven to be better in the majors. Then we're going to go to the tough one. Starting off with Ryan Thompson. We signed him to a 1-year contract in the offseason to come back, but we're actually going to DFA him. We have a lot of depth now at relief pitcher because of some trades, and we're actually going to DFA him. He'll probably be released. Sammy Ciani will also be sent down to AAA. Elliot Ramos had a good spring, and I want to see what he can do with the full-time left field job, but Ciani will be called up if we need him. Tyler Freeman also goes down despite hitting over 300. He could potentially be claimed off waivers, but I think he will fly through. The final two, Tony Santillan will be sent down. I thought about keeping him at the majors, but we're going to start him in AAA, and if a relief pitcher goes down, Santiago will probably be the first guy who gets the call. And then finally, we're going to send down Logan Davidson. Maybe a little bit of a shock. He's been the shortstop on this team for a few years, but we just have some good depth here now. And Richie Veach played so well. I want to see what he can do at the majors. So that's going to bring us to our final 26-man roster going into the 2028 season. I'm excited for this team. I mean, this is some excitement I have not felt for this series in a little bit of time. We actually have a pretty competitive team, I think. I think we have some good players overall. Had to make some tough decisions, but I think this team is gearing up for a good first year in Las Vegas. Let me know in the comments section below who you're excited to see as we get into the new season. As we had to put a couple guys on waivers. I'll also take a look at the waiver wire to see if there's anybody we want to pick up last minute for this team. Now, the last thing we'll do before we get into the outro is I want to preview some of the top teams around the league and just kind of get you guys familiar with some of the other teams and get you more immersed so when we see these teams do well or struggle, we know who's on the teams. We'll start off in the division where the Texas Rangers are up first. They were the division winners last year, and they're, still the team to beat, I feel like, in the AL West. They're led by Evan Carter, who's really become the face of this next generation of ball players. And only 25 years old, he is one of the best players in all of MLB. Corey Seager is still there, the two-time World Series MVP, who I think is one of the more unsung heroes in baseball. And they have Alek Manoah, fresh off a Cy Young Award-winning season. He has been great since being acquired in a trade from the Blue Jays a couple of years ago, and he got a massive extension. The Rangers also got a couple of players in free agency. Nick Lodolo from the Reds signed a 4-year contract, as well as Bailey Ober from the Twins, who had some interest in, but wasn't willing to match a qualifying offer and lose a draft pick for. But now we got to face against Ober, who signed a 2-year, $40 million contract. Team that finished second in the AL West last year was the Seattle Mariners. They kind of put it all together finally and ended up winning 89 games and made the postseason because of it. And they're pretty solid. They've built a nice core here. Julio Rodriguez leads the charge out there. He hasn't really quite captured the same magic from his season as a rookie, but he's still one of the better players in the league. And then now George Kirby is the true ace of the staff because they did lose Logan Gilbert to free agency. So we'll see how that works out for Seattle. The Angels went big last offseason to try to get Trout to the postseason, trading for both Pete Alonso and Nolan Arenado. It did not work. They just missed out on the postseason, and Arenado is no longer in LA. But Mike Trout is still there, 36 years old. It's been a while since we've been back to the postseason. Time's running out if they want to get him to that point. The last team is the Houston Astros, who was one of the more disappointing teams in baseball. Ejected themselves from the second half of the season, only winning 77 games. And it's interesting because this team is still very talented. I expect them to bounce back really strongly. They're led by the reigning AL MVP in Yordan Alvarez, who deservingly won the award for the first time in his career. And they made a big move this offseason, going out and giving big money to Brandon Marsh from the Philadelphia Phillies on a 7-year contract. Probably the first big position player move in the offseason. And we'll see how that pays off for the Astros. Also in the outfield, they have Kyle Tucker on the other spot, who's still in the second year of his long extension. He just won the batting title, so the bats are still there in Houston to make a move. As far as the other American League divisions, we'll start with the AL East, where we got to start with the Yankees, who won the division last year, winning 97 games. Still a very talented squad. They were busy last offseason. Weren't as busy this one, but they have a nice core in place, obviously led by the two-time AL MVP in Aaron Judge, who still absolutely slams home runs. And then they also have Jazz Chisholm, who they picked up a couple of off-seasons ago to help counteract that. They weren't as busy this offseason in free agency, but they did acquire Garrett Crochet in a trade away from our division rival, the Houston Astros, so he will help them to stabilize in the bullpen. The other team to look out for in the AL East is the Baltimore Orioles, and I like what this team has been doing constructing the roster, but they just lost Adley Rutschman to free agency, so a lot of that takes a back step role. I thought the Orioles would be the team to beat in the American League for years to come, but because of that loss, that kind of hurts things a little bit. They're still led by Gunnar Henderson, who made his first All-Star appearance this past year, as well as Ryan Mountcastle, who had a career season, winning an All-Star and a Silver Slugger, but not having Rutschman in that lineup will definitely hurt things out there in Baltimore. They also have Jackson Holliday, who is going to be missing the first month or two of the season with a broken leg, so that's not helping things for the O's. Going to the Central, you got to start with the Guardians, who for the first time in 79 years won the World Series from a wild card spot. They beat the Diamondbacks in 6. And I don't see why this team can't do it again. They are really talented. They're really deep. We've talked about a lot how they've been aggressive in constructing their roster. Yes, they lost Shane Bieber to us, but they still have plenty of talent and one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. Clase is there to close games out. Andres Jimenez is coming off a World Series MVP season. And they still have Gavin Williams to anchor what is a deep rotation. Obviously, losing Bieber is never a good thing, but they have the players to potentially replace him in the long run. Minnesota Twins have had the best record in the American League for 3 straight seasons. They won 100 games last year, the only AL team to do so. But there was a mass exodus in free agency for the Twins. They lost a lot of players, and I don't know if Minnesota is going to be able to recover. They still have Royce Lewis, but that's really it. I think the era of Minnesota dominating the top of the AL standings is over, and I honestly think they could finish 3rd or maybe even 4th in the division. Going over to the National League, starting off with the East, the Phillies lead the way over there. They won 100 games last year, one of only 2 National League teams to do so. This team is obviously led by their very deep pitching staff, probably the only pitching staff deeper, I think, than the Guardians. Dylan Cease, the former Cy Young Award winner, heads that rotation, and he's got a great number 2 in Zach Gallen, who won the Cy Young this past season. So the past 2 Cy Youngs have come, actually the past 3, because Gallen was a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, are on the Philadelphia Phillies. Johan Rojas will be the lead bat now with Marsh in Houston, and he won the World Series MVP a few years ago, but hasn't quite captured that form since then, so Philadelphia will expect a lot out of him, especially with a team like the Atlanta Braves pressuring, who's become kind of the modern dynasty. They've won 2 of the past 4 World Series, including both in 2024 and 2026, and it's an even number year, so if history repeats itself, we can see Atlanta winning it all again, and I don't see why not. They got one of the best bats in baseball in Ronald Acuna Jr. They have Ozzie Albies. This lineup is just so deep. Yes, they are getting older, so I think the window is closing, but I think the window is obviously still wide open for the Braves. They also have probably the most underrated pitcher in baseball in Spencer Strider, who for some reason doesn't get the credit that he deserves. And they went out and signed Johan Duran, the AL reliever of the year this past offseason, to a big money contract to be their closer. Now, what's interesting about signing Duran to a 7-year contract is they also have JoJo Romero, who's won the past 2 National League reliever of the year. So good luck beating the Braves in the 8th and 9th innings this season. There's also Matt Olson, a 2024 National League MVP, who's still hitting home runs at a very high level, 3 home run champion in the past 5 seasons. And then Sean Murphy behind the plate, one of the best catchers. This is still a good Braves team. I don't know how they didn't make the postseason last year despite winning 92 games. And they went out and added Christian Javier in the offseason to a contract away from the Houston Astros, a guy that I liked a lot. And they signed Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins. This team saw what the Phillies had done with the pitching staff, and they tried to mimic that and go out and get a good couple of pitchers. Going over to the Central, we got to talk about the Pirates, who have won the division again, winning 98 games last year. And contrary to what the Pirates usually do, they spent big this offseason, including on day 1. They went out and got the best player available in Shane McClanahan from the Rays, 8 years, over $300 million to get McClanahan to anchor that pitching staff. Now, they did trade away both Paul Skeens and David Bednar to the White Sox, which was kind of interesting. But they still have some talent here. O'Neal Cruz will lead the lineup, and they went out and got him some help in the form of Alex Kirilloff from the Minnesota Twins. Like I said, there was a lot of players who left Minnesota this offseason, so Kirilloff will help things for O'Neal Cruz in the lineup. And they also added Andres Munoz to be the closer away from the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Pirates spent a lot this offseason to try to sit aboard at the top of the NL Central. But I do believe this is the most competitive division in all of baseball. 3 teams won over 90 games in the NL Central, including the 93-win Cincinnati Reds, who have star power at the top. They made the postseason last year, didn't get far as they got eliminated in the wild card round. But they're still led by Vladdy Guerrero Jr., who is still a tank out there. I expect him to win an MVP one day. He won his 4th Silver Slugger this past season. Bo Bichette still hits for high contact. The former batting champion won his 4th Silver Slugger this past season. And then Elly De La Cruz is starting to take that next step. He's made the All-Star team the past 2 seasons at only 26. He will only get better. And then in the pitching staff, Hunter Green has started to elevate himself to the ace of this rotation, making an all-star appearance. So the Reds, still a top team in the NL Central. The third team to win 100 or 90 games in the NL Central was the Cardinals, who won 97, only finished a game behind the Pirates in the division. Not as flashy as the Pirates and the Reds, but the Cardinals just do what the Cardinals do, and that's chuck along and win a lot of games. Nico Horner was their big signing a couple off seasons ago, and he paid off in spades for St. Louis, getting named to an all-star appearance and leading them back to the postseason. And this year they went out and did acquire Logan Gilbert. So they usually acquire one big name in free agency every year, and this time it was Gilbert to a 6-year contract to be the ace of their staff. They also went out and got Alexis Diaz, who spent the last season in San Diego, to be the new closer for the Redbirds. And the Cardinals, Pirates, and Reds should still be at the top of a very competitive NL Central. Finally, we'll go into the NL West, where we got to talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks, who won the most games last year, 103. Were the World Series favorites, in my opinion, but lost in 6 games to the Guardians. This is still a very talented Diamondbacks roster, led by Corbin Carroll, one of the fastest players in all of baseball, and a Juan Soto at the top. So the Diamondbacks didn't really make a lot of moves this offseason. They didn't really have to. They did lose Andres Munoz, but he did struggle in the postseason, so I guess Arizona thought that they could move on from him. Tariq Skubal was their big get 2 off seasons ago. He got his second straight All-Star appearance. And then they also have Chris Paddock, who's been a nice under-the-radar kind of signing for Arizona to replace Zach Gallen, who departed. So I like what the Diamondbacks have done. Geraldo Perdomo, at 28 years old, is starting to become a reliable bat as well, one of the better defenders in the National League. And then Gabriel Moreno has become the best catcher, I would say, in the NL outside of Sean Murphy. They've done a very good job of developing their talent and been smart with their roster moves. The last team we'll talk about is, of course, the Los Angeles Dodgers. You can't have a season preview without talking about the Dodgers. They won 94 games last year. We're on the verge of actually not making the postseason, but they still have top-end talent on this team, of course, led by Shohei Ohtani, who won his 4th MVP this season. He's won the past 3, 4 of the past 5, and the only year he didn't win an MVP, he won a Cy Young. Mookie Betts is still playing at a top level at the age of 35. That's insane for him and his talent level. It shows how good he is. And Bobby Miller's blossomed into a starting pitcher. We remember when we saw him in AAA early on in this series. Tyler Glasnow is also there in the starting rotation, as they have a good 3-head monster with Glasnow, Ohtani, and Miller. And they went out and got a couple of starting pitchers later in the offseason. Blake Snell, after 3 years in Kansas City, signed a 1-year deal to the Dodgers, as well as Johan Oviedo from the Pittsburgh Pirates to a 4-year contract. And then they also went out and got Dean Kremer. So this is a very loaded pitching staff, and I think it's probably the deepest in baseball. The Dodgers are trying to get back to the top of the NL West, and the Diamondbacks look like they're going to have their hands full. So that's going to do it for the preview. I hope you guys enjoyed that and got you affiliated with the top teams in the league. Next episode, we are finally ready for opening day, and this year we're going to start it on the road at Fenway Park against the Boston Red Sox. We'll have to wait one more episode before we see our new Las Vegas home, but I can't wait to see this team starting in 2028. Shane Bieber will be on the mound against Brian Bayo of the Red Sox as we get ready for another season. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys still for supporting the season. I know this has been a longer series, and it's taken us a while to get to this point, but I know I'm still enjoying it, and I hope you guys are as well. If you are, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.